Alright, Diablo players, there is a massive amount of nerfs coming with the brand new edition of Season 9. People have already data mined and actually found out what's coming in Season 9. Now, I honestly want to say, just off of paper, a lot of these look like massive step backwards for the game. We're talking massive nerfs on implicits. You can see over here on specifically the overpower damage, we're going from getting almost 400, 392%, and it's getting nerfed to 130%, but it's also the same with different tempering recipes. Like, you can see the damage while fortified being at like the higher end over here, if it's at least one of the like legendary ones, which are honestly the only ones that matter here. We're going from 105 to 65, so big cuts everywhere. On top of that, there's also nerfs on some of the aspects, but on top of that, the thing that I find very interesting is in the campfire chat, they said that they wanted to increase the amount of resistances that we would be able to obtain in the game, which would be up to an additional 5%, which would make our characters tankier, so that would be a good thing, right? Well, they decided to go ahead and nerf a lot of the uniques that would give you all resistances, which is so counterproductive to say, guys, we're going to give you the ability to get more resistances. But then they nerf all the resistances, so we have to get more on our pieces of gear that is already going to be kind of nerfed because we have all of these newer nerfs coming into the game. And I want to say that it's not what I would consider ideal to announce for your player base, but there is actually something that was very interesting, and there's a reason why I have level 100 gameplay as opposed to the newer content. So for some reason, they decided that there is the elixir. Now, keep in mind, everything that we're showing off is Datamined, but the thing that I find very interesting is that there was a requirement of level 68 over here, and we already know level 60 is the maximum. So my guess is either in some sort of, seasonal update, maybe in Season 9, maybe it will be in the future, but we can only go to level 60. So it makes me think that the level 68 threshold may be similar to what we have in Diablo 3, where you essentially get to be level 60 and then the expansion brings you up to level 70. That's my guess. I don't know, but it's just weird that we have an item that you couldn't even consume that was released here. Again, could be just a placeholder, it could be nothing, but it could also be a hint towards a level cap rework. But I also wanted to look at some of the other stats that were getting buffed, because obviously some stuff is going to get buffed, some stuff is going to get nerfed, and that's okay. But a lot of stuff has to do with specifically damage over time. There is a brand new way to play where when we inflict damage over time, we can get infinite damage in the game because it increases the damage that they take by 0.3%. So basically think of it like Bane of the Stricken if you've ever played Diablo 3, and it works with damage over time. But on top of that, there's a lot of other patch notes, and I want to kind of go over those, but I wanted to go ahead and actually start off by going over some like generic stuff that I want to talk about. So first off, maybe these boss powers are going to be super amazing and they're going to carry us in the game. Otherwise, I want to say that the Season 9 update is a big step backwards, and it's just massive nerfs. We're talking about 80% overpowered nerf, they mentioned that before, as far as like scaling extra HP and getting the extra damage on it. And then there's over 50% nerf on some of these implicits. I mean, again, I showed you guys on some of them. The two-handed mace is going from 390 to 130. There's fortified nerfs, there's resistance nerfs. I don't know why they're increasing the cap but giving us more. Again, that leads to us forced to actually roll, let's say, all resistances on pieces of gear if we want to reach the newer cap. But like, most people just care about damage anyways. Maybe this doesn't really matter, but it's just so weird and backwards to say, guys, we're going to increase the amount of resistances that you can get, but then we're going to nerf the numbers. And then like I mentioned before, there could be some sort of leveling cap, but on top of that, this is one of the biggest things that is actually the massive nerf. So what I was showing off in the earlier stages, like, it sounds pretty crazy to go from, let's say, almost 400 damage to 130. But remember, this is additive damage, and it does matter because your builds sometimes will say, like, based on the damage versus close, based on the damage versus like distance or something like that, you would get other multipliers. Or like when you get the ultimate damage on like the rogue with one of the legendary nodes on your Paragon board, it gives you another multiplier. When you start nerfing all of these, you nerf a lot of other things as well, not just the additive damage, but the multipliers that go into the Paragon boards as well. And on top of that, they want to nerf the key passives. Like on Sorc, you can get like 900x plus, or if you're playing like close quarters on the rogue, you get like 300 plus x, right? They want to nerf all these down to about 75x for all of them. And then on top of that, again, with all of these nerfs coming to the game, I want to say that it's not looking to be something that I would say players would get excited about. However, if they nerf the monsters by, you know, a huge amount too, I think that this is an okay thing, and I want to go into it with an open mind, but I just don't get excited when I hear about the builds that I currently played in Season 8 to be nerfed even harder, and then we have all these other nerfs. So it's not just like all the numbers that I showed you, it is more nerfs, which we will go ahead and talk about. And I also want to kind of give some insight on some of the stuff that is getting buffed and why it kind of doesn't matter. So for starters, let's go over kind of some of the other things in the update. There's a lot of patch notes here. I mean, honestly, if I went over every single change, this video would be an hour plus long. Just to sum it up, pretty much everything is taking like random small nerfs. Like we go from 38% vulnerable damage on a lot of like base items to like 33%. Like, it's such a small change. Why change all of these? I don't know if they just got some sort of number and multiplier and just put like a negative multiplier on everything and just reduce it. But basically, overall, majority of things did get some nerfs, except for damage over time that just got a buff. And I think that this season may be the season of damage over time. There are a bunch of different changes to a bunch of the uniques. A lot of it is nerfs with resistances, which is something I already mentioned, but just as a base, a lot of them got changed. There is, however, one cool thing that I want to go ahead and mention. Melted Heart of Slig. It says, when taking damage, 75% is drained as a resource for every 1% maximum life you would have lost. It says, instead of is drained, it's just is drained. So what my guess would be for this is they're reworking it, but they don't have like the correct wording. I don't know. Is their new change just a capital D over here? I really don't know. But it makes me think that they want to change Mythic, the Mythic Melted Heart Slig, because it sucks. But on top of it, a lot of these actually took some sort of like a nerf. Some of these did get reworked for some of these Paragon nodes for easier understanding and easier uptime. But there is a lot of changes here. So I want to go over some of the stuff that would be better. Some of these, there are buffs, but overall, again, most of these are numerical nerfs. Like you can see, all of the tempered crit damage as well, because this is in almost every single build. You would have 85, and now you're going to 65. And while you might think, oh, that's only a 20% nerf, remember, when you're masterworking your weapons, all of these crits, all of those are going to get nerfed too, because, well, the base number is lower for the multiplier when you're getting a percent of like 25% bonuses, and then also the 5% bonus when you're going and masterworking, even if you don't get the crit on it, right? But again, when this happens times 12 on every single item in your slot, this is where all of these start to compound, as well as all the nerfs that I've already talked about. Again, all of these are just genuinely step backwards for my POV. But let's talk about some of the other newer changes for the classes, and we're going to kick it off with specifically the Barbarian. So almost all the classes are getting some sort of a buff on their basic attacks, which, I mean, honestly, basic attacks in the game, they haven't really been seeing too much play in a while. Flay has always kind of like made its re-emergence again and again. But Bash is getting like a triple damage buff. But I also wanted to let you guys know, just via like, you know, honest feedback over here, as far as the basic skills, they will most likely be useless. And I actually kind of agree with this person over here. I believe Yugioh also made a video talking about it, but I even mentioned before, when you multiply things times 0, it's still 0. And I think Blizzard even mentioned this in their campfire chat, which that's cool that they're watching our videos. But at the same time, the thing that I'm really concerned about is like, you're kind of hyping players up with basic skills with a lot of these buffs, but I want to say take these with a grain of salt, as these may not actually be really viable endgame builds. Maybe some of these basic attack builds will be viable, but again, they've nerfed so many of these different areas, like especially on the tempers, as far as getting these multipliers. It will basically potentially not be what you think they will be. Like, even though we're going from like 33% damage to 90% damage, don't lock in and think, oh, triple damage, it's going to be super good. A lot of these are so far behind, like, let's say Barbarian right now, Earthquake is the hot thing, right? The pet Earthquake variant. It's just nowhere near that. Now, they are also nerfing the Earthquake, so if they buff one thing and then they nerf down the other thing, they might line up a little bit better, but I still think it's going to be very far off. But pretty much all the basic skills, like Fillet is getting like basically over double, Bash is almost triple, Frenzy is getting like more than double of the damage. And then we buff Hammer of the Ancients from 98% to 110%. It's just, it's not where it needs to be, I feel like. This doesn't make Hammer of the Ancients like in Season 2, where it was hitting and just deleting the game. I feel like they really need to take a step back and actually look at what they're actually doing. And as long as they actually get gameplay of, let's say, at Pit 100, as long as I can play Hoda and pretty much delete most of the content at Pit 100, I think that they did a good job. But I just don't think that buffing Hoda by, right now it's a 12% damage increase, I just don't think that's going to get it up to par. Anyways, Leap doing more damage over here. We got some Lunging Strike getting a little bit more damage, getting triple over there. Abundance giving you more spirit. We're going from Claw from 28, 80%, maybe locking that Crone Druid. You got Earth Spike getting from 19% to 90 damage. Sounds really good over here. The main problem that I have with the Grizzly Rage, which they wanted to buff, is I talked about this before. The rank 1 push that I had with my Grizzly Rage build with the Druid, that build no longer works because you cannot permanently upkeep your Grizzly Rage. So this means when I'm in my downtime of my Grizzly Rage, I don't do any damage. That's a problem. If you get all this extended bonus like duration, it can't go above a certain amount. The reason why Grizzly Rage was good before is you can infinitely sustain in that. Just like Cataclysm, the reason why certain skills are good is you can 100% uptime. When you remove the player's uptime on all these different buffs that would be active, well then the build just simply stops working. And unless it's like some sort of bug build, that's just how Diablo 4 goes. It's like if you're not playing the bug builds a lot of times, the builds just simply fall flat compared to the, what is the bug, what's the hot thing flavor of the month. Anyways, Maul is getting a pretty big increase, but again, most of these probably don't matter too much because they're just, you take a build that's like F tier, right, or D tier, and then you multiply it times 4 or 5 times damage. It's still not that great. But as far as Nature's Fury over here, you do get 20x more Earth and Storm damage, and these free skills count as both. Some of these are just like wording changes, and it's fine. I think that these kind of help out to make it like one sentence instead of like, having additional fluff text. But Toxic Claws over here, now we don't get that additional base as poison, but we just get 5x multiplier of poison damage, which is a pretty low multiplier to be honest. But on top of that, Earth Sign Strength over here, remember Overpower is getting massive nerfs in terms of like your overhealth, like when you're max HP. And then Vigilance over here, we gain some sort of damage reduction. This is getting nerfed, but like, it's like so small, it's like whatever, like doesn't really matter. Wind Shear, this was actually meta at one point, but again, with all of the nerfs in the game, now maybe you can try to consider running it again, but again, we are getting a lot of other nerfs in different departments, and remember, the game has gotten much harder, so wait and see if like the Wind variant is good again, because I remember back when we were playing like the Infernal Hordes, this was like a pretty good build. Anyways, Necromancer over here, now we have this one over here. Our curse skills deal 100% shadow damage, and then it increases to 30x of your damage to crowd control, vulnerable, and crit strike damage. And then this one, for some reason, gets to go up to, says bonuses up to 400x over here. So it's weird because they said they wanted everything to go up to like 75. But this one, I guess, it gets lucky and it gets to go and be above and beyond what they mentioned in the campfire chat. Bone Splinters is like double damage. Again, most of these are like the basic skills. I'm just going to mention now, just as a heads up, a lot of the basic skills are 2 to 3 times as much damage, but I just don't expect most of these to be like lock in a Decompose build or anything like that. Ossified Essence got increased up to 100. Some of the ones that are more conditional may let you go up to above 75, but again, that was their like main goal. Again, overpower damage is so nerfed over here. What's weird is they not only nerfed like all the overpower damage by again like cutting it by like a third. Basically, you have 1/3 of the amount, so it's like nerfed by 66%, and then you have like the overpower on top of that getting changed. So Blood Wave is taking some nerfs over here with this update. Overall, again, just nerfs, and then Shadow Blight. This goes up to 200 shadow damage, and then it's increased by 20x instead of 100x. But then the damage and shadow damage bonuses go up to 300x. So some of them don't actually follow the rule, I guess, which is kind of a good thing, because I think nerfs in general, to cap everything at 75, which is what they kind of stated on the live stream, wouldn't be as fun, because then it's just like, it doesn't matter which key passive you take if they're all about 75, right? But that did technically make some of the other options just not viable, because why would you take one that gives you like, 60x instead of 300x? But some of them you have to build your character into. Like with the rogue, you got to get all the damage to close to get the close quarters to actually be good. Alchemic Mixture over here, there's a couple of changes, but for the most part, a lot of the like basic skills like Blade Shift, for some reason Blade Shift only gives you 15% boost. I don't know why. It's not like this is going to be that great. They could have like tripled that thing to it. It probably wouldn't matter as much. But as far as close quarters goes, like I said, 75x was kind of the thing that they wanted to kind of put as like the average cap. This one going up to 90x is a little bit more, but going from 300 to 90x with all the rest of the nerfs, again, all this is going to add up. The only basic skill I believe that Rogue ever used that was meta was Heartseeker. It's getting basically a double buff over here, so maybe you can try out that one and see how that one goes. With like the Victimize, Victimize was basically the big offender here, and that's why Heartseeker was so dang good. And again, that was something maybe unintentional bug, but that's how Diablo 4 is. Like when you go back to seeing these builds, you're like, oh man, Heartseeker double buff. Well, the reason why it was so crazy before is actually Victimize being bugged, not essentially Heartseeker just being a good skill. But maybe this could be an option. Well, who knows? Again, Puncture actually did see some play for like lucky activation chance, but doubling the damage isn't going to, as far as I'm aware, make it like top tier. And then we have the Victimize bonus over here is getting changed up. Instead of it going up to 150, it's now 20x of the vulnerable bonus here, and then it goes up to 300x, and then the current damage says like 94. And then as far as Sorc goes, again, a lot of the basic skills are getting buffed, so I'm not going to mention all of these. It's just that some of these got tripled, some of them got doubled. Fireball is getting a buff, but overall the Sorc is taking a massive nerf with one of the key passives getting a massive change. Where is it? It has like some sort of like max multiplier. Where is it? But Lightning Spear also a big nerf over here. It says you can only up to 12 spears. This one deals 80% of damage per hit. Before it said 16%. I know that Lightning Spear is getting a massive nerf somewhere in here. It has like another cap. But as far as Incinerate goes, some of these are getting buffed over here. Again, they're nerfing another key passive, and that's the reason why. And then with Spark, again, there's some extra damage. It probably doesn't matter. And then with Veer's Mastery, the crit strikes have a chance to cause surrounding enemies to take some extra damage, or if there's no other targets, you hit the same target again for 300 instead of 500. I don't know if this was something that a lot of people were really utilizing, but that is getting some nerfs over there. But that's kind of nice that you have a 25% chance instead of 15% chance. As far as Spiritborn goes, there is like acceleration change over here. A lot of the basic skills are getting buffed, but who knows, maybe this is something to consider with Spiritborn, as there's a lot more basic skill interaction with Spiritborn and some of like the uniques. So that one I would say maybe you can take a look at. As far as skill modifiers go, Lightning Strike, we get an extra 40% is bleeding. Let's see, any of the other ones. I'm going to kind of skim through these because I don't want this video to be too long, but I want to go over some of the changes that I felt like mattered. As far as Rogue goes, Dance of Knives is getting nerfed in two different ways. So Concealment, whatever skill that breaks it, will give you that bonus, causes all skills for 4 seconds to be guaranteed crit. So there is kind of a buff. It's for 4 seconds, but you cannot infinitely snapshot the Concealment anymore. And then on top of that, Dance of Knives, for some reason they want you to move longer while traveling. So basically in the earlier stages of the game, because movement speed is kind of something you don't get access to, it's going to make it for even slower experience when you're playing that. And then on top of that, the Supreme Death Trap, you have instead of it going from 60x, well, it's 60x now. It used to be 180x. So again, big nerfs over there. Oh, here's the Lightning Spear nerfs more likely. Let's see. Lightning Spear stuns enemies for, instead of 2 seconds, it's 0.5. So that's a nerf over there, but there should be another nerf that we'll go over that actually does matter. As far as the aspects goes, a bunch of these got some sort of rework or change to make them a little bit better. So this one over here, it used to do 15x, and now it's 40x, so there's a little bit bonus. I don't know why it's kind of scuffed over here with like the bonus damage. It shows the current bonus. Keep in mind, these are all like data mines, so some of the text or some of the things may need to be updated. As far as Necromancer goes, anything that's important over here, we have Coldbringer every 4 seconds. The Mages class Blizzard that will deal some sort of amount of damage, and this is getting an increase. So as far as it goes, I can tell you that the Mages are definitely something to look out for the Necromancer, and then the Hydra for the Rogue is something that you want to look out for. Some of these other aspects over here may have gotten changed. There's supposed to be a heavy emphasis on using poison traps in the next season over here, so you can see the poison traps cooldown will be reduced by up to 50%, so that's kind of cool if you want to try to get some extra cooldown, and I think this is a good changeover. So this is like a buff. If you do need cooldown reduction with that, that is something that you can consider. Let's see, is it the Lightning Spear cause enemies to dealing 60% of normal damage. Lightning Spear deals 20 to 40x instead of the 60 to 100 of your, it used to be crit damage, but I guess now it's generic damage. So we'll have to wait and see if this is like an okay thing. But overall, like the numbers, instead of it being 100x, yeah, that's a pretty big number change. And so that's one of the nerfs over there. So there's a bunch of changes with some of the uniques. Again, a lot of these has to do with like what's ever like tempered on the thing in terms of upgrading. A lot of, again, temper number changes. We're going from, on some of them, in the Storm, we're going from, like, let's say 30 at the higher end to 30, or actually 60 to 65. So it's like a 5% increase on buff. But a lot of these overpower ones, which is kind of how a lot of the Druid builds did play, especially with the Bear tag, which is weird because they want us to play the Bear Druid in the next season with some sort of poison, which you would normally run overpower in all of the Bear builds, but it's like they're getting nerfed by like half over here. And I already showed you guys the implicits with the massive nerfs as well. But overall, there's some Necromancer changes. I'm not going to go over all of like the temper changes because, again, it's just mostly just nerfs over there. As far as it goes with Rogue, there was one thing that I thought was interesting. It had to do with the penetrating shot. Actually, it was Eagle Horn, if I can go over that. So this was kind of interesting because I actually really liked Pen Shot. And with the Pen Shot, instead of Pen Shot making enemies vulnerable, it bounces off of walls and dealing more damage. It just makes it so it always bounces off of the walls and deals like 80x more damage versus every 4th cast, which is good because no one really used it for that. But the whole bounce off the walls mechanic, it's really hard on certain bosses to get good value off of it. I think it's one of the most fun things in the game. It's not very meta at all. But especially with all of these nerfs, I want to say it's going to be a lot harder for people to play certain things. But overall, kind of want to just wrap up my thoughts of like all of these things because otherwise this video would be too long. So keep in mind, this is a Datamined. I get it, it's not official, but it is in like the code, right? It's not like someone's just like speculating. This is in the actual Datamined for the game for the next season. I don't really know why they nerfed golems for some reason. I know they want the whole season to be about the skeletal mage, so maybe they're like, all right, we'll just make sure that golem is like worse, so then the other one will perform better. I don't really know why they nerfed Dance of Dice. It's not really like a good end game build for the most part compared to like Death Trap, but if they nerfed Death Trap, I guess maybe this would go up. I just don't get why they nerfed a lot of the tempers, even on the basic skills. There's a lot of other like random nerfs in the game. It just doesn't really make sense why they're nerfing it if they want to like buff these up. I think that they should have overall only added things that needed to be buffed and gave them the buffs. And then also when you nerf all these tempers, just to mention, you nerf a lot of the multipliers at the end game as well. I feel like slowing down the leveling experience does not equal more fun, and making players spend more time does not equal more fun. There's just kind of some feedback for Blizzard as a Diablo partner. I'm going to probably just directly contact them for that, but I just want to let you guys know. This is how I feel about the game. Let me know if you guys disagree with any of these, as I want these suggestions to be kind of what majority of the players want. But I just think overall, slowing down the leveling experience is not what I would consider more enjoyable when you nerf all of like the damage across the board. But I also wanted to warn players, if you're hitting for billions in a build, and then some builds hit for 1 million, when you do these 2 to 3x multipliers, it will not be closing the gap, which is something that I mentioned over here, that like a lot of these are almost useless change. It's kind of like baiting players that watch the campfire and like, oh cool, they're going to buff basic skills, but they're just so far behind. Hopefully it's not going to, bait too many players into something that's bad. I hope I'm wrong, and I hope these basic skills, for whatever reason, dominate the game, and you can do pit 100 with like a lot of the basic skills, but I just don't see that as something viable. And I just don't know why they nerf like hundreds of like the skill tempers across the board, and as well as a lot of the implicits. And they said that they didn't want to have the them be the fun police, but I just think that major nerfs don't get people excited about your game. If you're going to nerf all the monsters, that could be okay, but I think that what you should announce is like, we're going to be changing up the game, and these numbers, while we are going to be lowering the numbers, we're going to be lowering the HP of the monsters so things kind of get balanced, so it's not too disproportionate. But when you announce all these things getting nerfed and then the monsters stay the same, a lot of people are like, well, why would I want to come back and play your game if I just feel weaker than I did previously? Because I felt like Season 7 was a really good season. And then Season 8 and 9, they're just worse on paper, at least. At least for me, Season 8 is a step backwards from Season 7, because Season 7 felt smooth. Like, I could play a lot of different builds and be powerful. But in Season 8, it's like, well, if you don't play the most powerful thing, your build is just not going to be able to get your glyph upgrades, therefore it's not playable at the end game. You make less builds viable at the end game when you nerf everything instead of just buffing the underperformers. If you nerf the top tier builds, yes, you bring everything kind of up in line, But by doing that, your content is too hard to the point where people, they just don't want to get triple GAs. They just don't want to go farm and play your game longer, because it feels like it's almost like playing a game where like you're throttling the player's experience, if that makes any sense. But I just think that buffing the underperforming skills is the way to go with this game. And then I want to mention, a lot of the core skills just simply don't work at the end game. Again, when you're like, okay, people want to play Hoda, all right, we'll buff it by 12%. These just simply aren't enough numerical stats to make them viable. And I think some of the game design decisions almost feel like they didn't really fully play the build at like an end game level, whereas like if you buff some of these, you know, basic skills in the early game, that's great. You can level up faster with them in that sense. But as far as the end game goes, that's where I want to say that these builds will just kind of fall flat, and people are going to be like, well, what the heck, this build sucks, my build's done, I gotta swap, right? But I want to say that I'm still hopeful for the powers to be very strong. Maybe these are going to hard carry the entire season, right? Like these new powers that we get are going to be awesome. But that means Eternal is absolutely cooked, because if we nerf everything, obviously Eternal is going to get that update, and then it's going to squish all of the numbers. Eternal players just get the short end of the stick. And while I personally don't play Eternal at all, the thing is that I still look out for that as a way that people do like to engage in Eternal content. And for the Eternal players, if you're super nerfed and you're not able to complete the content, it's going to be even more difficult if they don't nerf the monsters. And that's a very dangerous area. You want to keep, if the players are playing Eternal, they're probably not interested in making another character. Like if they're still playing Eternal, but if they come back and their character is bricked, right? This is a big issue and a big backlash with Path of Exile, is you had so many people that had builds, and then the builds stopped to function once the new update came out, right, for the Dawn of the Hunt. It was bad, right? So I think this is what makes people quit. If their build functions and they spent, you know, hundreds of hours on the character in Eternal, because remember, these players that are playing Eternal, they may be not able to play like the most meta things, and when you nerf them, they're just going to simply quit your game. But I'm going to go into the PTR open-minded, but I don't want Diablo 4 to feel like a full-time job game, if that makes any sense. I think people like that Diablo 4 is a much more casual game and experience. And then I want to say that for most people that are blasters, a week or a weekend is kind of where I would say is kind of a sweet spot for people to kind of be able to kind of max out one character. And keep in mind, I think the way that people are going to stay in your game a lot longer, Blizzard, is by letting people experiment and play with multiple builds, and as well as playing multiple classes. Not making it so long for the grind to get the aspects, to get the Paragon up, to the point where people just feel like, I only make one character, and I didn't really like the character, or whatever, I'll play maybe next season, right? And they only make one character, and they don't really get to max out. Let the players max out a couple different builds. You have the armor, you have this awesome system that lets people kind of swap in between builds, but when it takes too long to get those aspects and get your character's progression up, people just get burnt out and they're just going to look at other options. And especially when the Paragon grind for 300 is simply just unachievable by majority of players. And while you don't need to hit that, I think a lot of people that could hit Paragon 300 and play multiple classes and have a lot of builds that are really good, that can do at least pit 100, they're going to stick around in your game longer. That also means that they may actually look at the shop, so it actually incentivizes them to make it a lot more accessible for players to stick around in the season. I think their mindset is players aren't staying long enough in the season, they only play for a couple weeks and then they leave, right? And I think Blizzard's mindset is, okay, well, if we just nerf everything and make it harder to progress, they're going to stick around to get their progression up. But I think that that's the opposite effect. That definitely happened with me, where I'm just like, well, it takes too long to make it like other builds. I'm just going to go play Path of Exile. I'm going to go play Last Epoch. Like, that's at least how I feel. I don't feel like my time is valued when it takes so damn long to get to that point. And I think that if they can adjust that, hopefully that will make the game more enjoyable. But anyways, that's my thoughts. Let me know yours down below on any of the things that we talked about, whether it be the nerfs or the buffs. But honestly, damage over time is looking pretty good in the next upcoming season, because, well, instead of getting a nerf, it got a buff. So when you nerf everything else and then you buff one thing, it definitely makes people more incentivized to play that other form of content. But I don't know, I'm really excited to see if they change the level cap and if they nerf the monsters. Maybe this season is going to be looking good. But again, I feel like these are major steps backwards for the game in general. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this long rant video. If you did, drop a like and subscribe if you're new. If you want to see an update to it, I'll give you guys gameplay. Maybe I'm blowing this out of proportion. Maybe Season 9 is going to be absolutely amazing and it's going to be easy and we can start blasting again, because I felt like Season 4 and Season 5 are really good states of the game. And then once we moved into like Season 6, Season 7 was pretty good, but then Season 8 with all the nerfs, I just enjoyed the game a lot more in Season 7 and Season 4. But anyways, take care and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out.